Hello, good afternoon once again. I am Doreen Apia. I am a staff of AFLIA. You are all welcome to today's meeting, and it is a follow-up meeting to our yesterday's webinar. This morning, you are all welcome. I can see a few people here. We have Abba Nenna Messi. You are welcome. We have Abu Bakar. We have Bala Mohammed, we have Believe Asanko, we have Caroline, you are here, we have Emily Onyango, we have Kabanda Margaret, we have Kennedy Michael, we have Lane Jibril, we have Mary Ann, we have our own Intabisen Kotokwani. My dear, our birthday is just around the corner. Stay put. We have Mary, we have Philip Angwa, we have Samuel Apia Chumesi, we have Suma, you are all welcome, and we have our own Valenasi Musanji, you are all welcome once again to this afternoon's webinar. Like I said yesterday, today we are going to have an open discussion, even though it is a webinar. We are, Dr. Nkem is our resource person, and she's going to take us through a few things that we will need to know. We are going to talk about disaster management in African libraries. How are we prepared in our climate change environment? Things are changing. The seasons are shifting. There is pollution everywhere. Should there be a disaster, a natural disaster tomorrow, how will you be able to stand? How will you be able to operate? I am sure this conversation is very important. In the midst of also having copyright issues at stake in various countries, how do we handle this issue? Climate change has come to stay. It is with us. How are we going to address this issue? How are we going to amend or make certain changes in our environment that will help us as librarians? And how are we also going to spread the news by way of disseminating information about climate change and many others? This afternoon, Dr. Nkem is here with us, and we have with us here, we have Stanley, our research coordinator. You are all welcome. Dr. Nkem, I'll not talk much. You are welcome to take over and lead us through. We are itching and we are ready to answer most questions and also to hear a lot. We have Bala here and we have Abba. Okay, you are all from Nigeria. I've already acknowledged you. Are all welcome once again. Dr. Nkem, please take over.
Thank you very much, Doreen. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Doc. We can hear you.
Oh, that's great. So I welcome everyone again. Thank you for being here for the part 2 of what we started yesterday. So first of all, I want us to do a recap, but this is the outline for what we are going to do today. We are going to do a recap, then we are going to talk about all these other things under. So first of all, this is the recap. Yesterday, we talked about climate change and we say that the earth is heating up. Apologies for that. It's not hearing of heating up. It's a typo. It's heating up, you know, that although that all this while, they say there is for the past 4.5 million.
Hello, Dr. Nkem, you are... we can see your presentation screen.
Oh, you can't see? But yeah, I can see it.
You're still in edit mode.
All right. Let me stop share. Let me stop share and try again. Please let me know when you can see it.
Yeah, it's okay now.
Can you see? Can you see it?
Yes, it's okay now, Doc. We can see.
Hello? Can you
Yes,
see
Doc,
it now?
Yes, Dr. Nkem, we can see
All
it.
right.
Yes,
So
thank
I
you.
say that we're starting from a recap that the earth is heating up, and I made an apology for the typo up there, not hearing up, please, heating up. That although there have been changes, that's change is a constant thing for the earth, for the climate, but that the recent changes are quite worrisome, as what usually took hundreds of thousands of years to happen are all happening within one decade because of the increasing levels of CO2 in the air, and how we cut down trees, the burning of fossil fuels, that all these things are heating up the earth, and we do not have any planet B to go to if anything happens to the world that we live in. We talked of the consequences in the world. We talked of the heat wave in India, in Pakistan, the wildfires in Germany, in Spain, and the heat wave in Europe too. We talked about the storms that early this year in Malawi, Mozambique, and Madagascar. And we talked about flooding in Australia and other places. Then we also say that in Africa, that is really, really worrisome because we are the most vulnerable, considering the economic status, the high level of poverty, and the lack of understanding of what is really happening. We talked about how the Sahel region is getting hotter. That's Senegal, Gambia, Mauritania, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Nigeria, Chad, Central African Republic, South Sudan, Eritrea, and Ethiopia. And also what's happening in Southern Africa, in East Africa, in North Africa, the water stress, the food insecurity, the health implications, and so on. We also talked about how all these things are fueling the herdsmen stroke farmer conflicts, because when people, they do not have enough water in their places for animals or to farm, and they go to another country, another area, there are bound to be conflicts. We also talked about yeah, I think I've spoken about the water stress, conflicts even in where people fish and so on, because the fishes are also threatened. That's life underwater. And we also talked about now what the world is doing about it. We talked of this Montreal Protocol of 1987, the UNFCCC. We talked about the Kyoto Protocol. But there was an interesting thing that I didn't say here that I remembered. You see, this protocol, it could have worked too, but like I said, China and India, there were no particular things that we are told to do, bearing in mind that they are amongst the largest producers of gases that harm the atmosphere. Then also, surprisingly, United States signed the agreement along the way, but it refused to ratify it. So it was thrown out, and then the Paris Agreement, and we spoke of the three key areas of this agreement, that is the one that is that is being used now. We spoke about how we talked about how to limit emissions. We talked about also, they say that every 5 years, every country should come in and report. We've been able to do this or do that about this. And irrespective of the amount of emissions that's coming from your country, that you must make a report. Then an interesting aspect of the Paris Agreement is also that it has a financing component, so that developing countries can also, through it, get funds to fashion out innovative solutions to help bridge the gap, or to find solutions to the consequences of climate change. Then we also talked about the African Union Climate Change and Resilient Development Strategy and Action Plan. And we say that libraries can help to strengthen the abilities of African communities to adapt and manage the risks related to climate change. Then after that, we talked about AFLIA's African Action Plan for librarians, what we can do, because it's easy to stand aside and say, oh, but I mean, what's our business with the climate? But AFLIA is saying no, that we are part of the society. We are information managers, and we have a critical role to play in ensuring that people know about this and that people are equipped with the information to adapt as much as is possible. So we talked about climate education, how to promote and provide resources for solutions and so on. We talked about how to eliminate confusion about the climate crisis so that there will be no disinformation or misinformation that people can ride on and not adapt. Then we now talked about disaster management, and we say today is the day that we are going to delve into it. So that's a recap. Now, let's get into what we have today. And we are going to do it this way. There will be a space for discussions. There will
Hello, Dr. Cam. Hello.
Hello, Stanley. I can hear you, but Dr. Nkem, I think she's having a problem. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Doc, we can hear you now, please.
Hello.
Hello, Doc. Yes, Doc, we can hear you now.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Hello, Dr. Nkem. Hello. Wow. Hello. She's off now.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, Doc, we can hear you now, please.
All right, let me share my screen again because
yes.
I went off totally.
Yes,
all right.
Yes.
Okay. So I say that today we are going to now delve into how we can manage disasters in the libraries, as consequences of climate change. And I also said that we are going to have opportunities to talk. That I believe in tacit knowledge. Sometimes you won't know you know something until you open your mouth and start sharing it. Then you find out that, oh, I really know about this. Or you feel that what you know, it doesn't make sense. You'll be surprised that that thing that you will say here today may be the only thing that someone else may take away from here. So please, just to get us prepared and ready for how we are going to run today. So this one, we're talking about cultural heritage institutions and disasters. There's disasters can occur, but there's something about us as libraries or archives or museums, that when these things occur, what happens to our resources? You know, some of them are rare manuscripts. Some of them are artifacts that you can't get any other place. Many of our resources are susceptible to humidity, to fire and stuff like that. So the question here today now is, what steps can these institutions take in order to ensure that their unique holdings and resources are kind of shielded against danger and irreversible loss? Once you can't hear me, send me a text on my phone. You know that my network is unstable. So the first thing here, you know, is a natural thing, especially for Africans. Something is happening, you ask the person, they'll tell you, oh, it is well. You see danger is coming, you tell, it can't happen here. Not me. I'm covered. There's nothing that will happen to me. So, but the first thing we are saying is that don't think it can never happen to your institution. Be realistic in assessing the risks, you know, possibilities of things that could happen in your own environment. One thing that we've seen about the consequences of climate change is that today there may be floods here, this year, next year, it will be a heat wave. Like, I know that I watched CNN this morning and they were talking about the heat wave in the US and again floods in some areas in US, you know, because it's as if there's no longer a pattern to follow. So just know that it can happen to any institution. That your institution does not have any any coverage, so that if it happens to others, they'll spare your own. No. As information professional, just bear in mind that it can happen anywhere. And because of that, I want us to talk about something. Let's say at the next staff meeting you have, or when you talk with other staff in your library, bring up a discussion on what if, you know, you're not sure yet, but what if? What if a fire breaks out in your library? What if a flood happens in the town? And I asked Stanley, please, to open, to know if there are people that we can unmute to speak, to tell us if this kind of thing happens, what should be the first reaction of the staff? Who will the matter be reported to first? Do you have any procedures that you follow in your library in case of emergencies? What facilities or materials should be saved first? And then anyway, who will move what? You know, we need to do this so that we will have a clearer focus of, if anything happens, what if it happens? What will be our reaction? So I don't know who's ready to open up the discussion. Is there anyone that has anything to say about this? What should be the first reaction of the staff, of the staff in your institution, in your library, if there's a fire or there's a flood in the town? You know, maybe it has not come to your library yet, but it may come, or is on its way. You see, you hear that the areas around you are getting flooded. Who do you report to first? Do you hold a meeting first to talk about how do we do it? Or are there established protocols that you follow? Anyone here with any idea? Is there anybody here with any idea? But while you're thinking about it, we'll still get to this spot again. So let's move on, but think about it. In your library, do you have any procedures, you know, step by step? If this happens, this is what we do. If the other one happens, this is what we'll do. Anyway, before we do it, we talk to this person. What can we move? Where do we move them to? Which one should be saved first? So while you're thinking about that, let's move on. But please, we are going to come back to this and still talk about it. Then here I say that planning is not being pessimistic, so to speak. And while we are talking of that, you find out that when you're planning for a disaster management plan or procedure or protocol, please never ever make it a one-person task, especially if others are going to be involved in implementing the plan. Except it's just you that works alone by yourself, all by yourself, for yourself, and just by yourself. Then you can do it all by yourself. But so far as there are other people that are involved, so far as there are other people in your library, in your institution, even if you get the idea from here, from what we are doing, you can't go and sit down and say, let me draw it up for my library. You must involve others. Why? Because you have to think of all that will play different roles at different levels within the plan and involve them right from the onset. Whenever you're planning a process, it doesn't matter whether it's for this or anything that's going to involve other people. I can assure you, if you do it all by yourself, then there's a high rate, there's a high chance that it will fail, because people do not know what it is. People do not own it because they were not a part of the planning process. So that is why we say, please ensure that in drawing up the plans and thinking about the plans, please don't go alone. Please don't think that you're smarter than everybody in your library because you heard this. Yes, I can do it. No, please bring in the others so that they too can learn and understand why you need this plan. Again, this is another chance for discussion, but we may jump in. But just know that avoidance and denial are not part of planning. You know, you can be making a plan and say, well, let's just plan, but I know it won't happen. Please, just be have it in your heart, in your head, in your mind that the possibility does exist because our climate is changing. I remember when, it never used to be so hot. All of a sudden, it gets so hot. We used to know the patterns of rain and so much, but now rain falls anyhow. And sometimes it's so ferocious that you feel that this wind will pull down the house. You can never say. And the question here again is, do you know any library that has disaster management plans? Let's keep it. We'll still get back and discuss all of this. But anytime that you want to talk, you want to share something, please indicate by raising your hand here. But first things first, before you plan, you have to think, what are the resources, the facilities and artifacts that are at risk? Could they be itemized department by department? And you see now why it's really important to involve everyone. Because you may think you know what is in all the departments, even if you're the head. You will be surprised that a library assistant there, a library attendant, a clerk may know some things that are there that you do not know. Then you find out, can they be lifted? Can they be easily replaced or duplicated? Do you have rare books? Let me share something that Doreen told me this morning. She said something about libraries, learning how to store things in the cloud. About libraries, using their repositories more and more to store things. And when they store things there, to always also have a mirror site where they can have a kind of backup. I'm sure that I will still talk about that some more. But what is the present state of your resources? Physical, digital, good, worn out, or almost degrading? This is the risk assessment, because you need to assess what are the things that are at risk. What are the risk factors for the identified items? Is it water, humidity, fire, dust, theft? Are they breakable? Can they easily disintegrate? Then what are the risk triggers? Handling, handling can really make some information resources to spoil. Power surge. I've heard the story of people that left, somebody left the AC on somewhere, and when they took light, and when light came back, there was a power surge and the wire fell apart. Unfortunately, beneath the AC, there was a chair close by that was padded with foam. It fell on that chair, and the rest is history. Do you have devices that are malfunctioning? Like, let's say you have smoke detectors that, since they put it, initially it was okay. If there's smoke, it will beep. But after some time, we don't hear it again. We don't know if it's okay or not. We don't know what the problem is. Do such things exist in your institution? That's a risk trigger, because you may not know when the fire now comes or smoke starts anywhere, because those smoke detectors are not working anymore. Non-maintenance. It may just be that what that detector needs, what it needs is just a change of batteries to work again. That is all. Just change the batteries. So these are the things that you have to find out. Then, if it's in is an area that theft occurs or civil disturbances. I remember that, I think it was last year or last 2 years, there was an unrest somewhere in South Africa, and the library was burnt down. So how was that library protected? Were there strong burglary proofs or stuff like that? Then another risk trigger is the instituted protocols for emergencies. Do you have a protocol? Are there procedures to follow? What's the first thing that you do if you know that something is wrong and is an emergency that could be a disaster? What do you know about it? I remember that, I think it was last 2 years in 2020, AFIA had asked libraries, do you have emergency preparedness plans? Our responses showed that only a few number of libraries have this. It's as if, like I said, we believe in, oh, it can't happen to us. Nothing bad will happen. But today we are realizing that we need to have protocols for emergencies. If we don't have, that is a risk trigger. It is a trigger that can set off other things happening. Again, this is another discussion that we get into. What we'll do is that we'll run through and we get back to all these parts again. What are the resources in your institutions that are worth saving? Everything, some of the things, or none? Can they be moved? Can they be easily replaced? What are the triggers in your library or institutions? No one knows. Does someone know what to do first in case of an emergency as an individual or part of a team? We'll get back to this. Then who does what? Who does what? If there's an emergency, who does what? If there's a disaster, who does what? This should be a part of the plan that we are talking about. Whoever that is in charge or whoever that wants to do this for their institution, working with others in the planning process, should identify individuals that are working in certain offices. What would they do in case of an emergency? If you're in the IT section, what do you do? People in the security, what do they do? People in one section or the other, what do? Because this will help you to identify the chain of command, so that as you're making plans, a disaster management plan, and as we said, involve others, also assign duties and responsibilities to individuals in certain offices occupying certain posts, or a team, so that everybody will know that since I work in this section, since I am a part of the cataloging section, this is what I must do. There's fire. Oh, water is coming. One part of the library is doing that as if it wants to fall down. What do we do? All right. And again, I said, let's talk about it. There are people that we call library assistants or clerks, that can be on duty in our libraries. What do you think should be their role in an emergency or when a disaster occurs? Why I'm asking this is that maybe whoever that is in charge of the library will know, oh, I should do this, I should talk to these people, call these people, that one is like obvious. But how about these people who need permission from higher officers in order to perform their duties in the library? What happens about them? Are there phone numbers that they can call if an emergency happens in your library? Are those phone numbers available to everyone? Again, I asked, are there protocols to follow in an emergency in your library in case of a disaster or an emergency? We'll get back to this to ask to see if we have answers. But as we are going through now, just begin to imagine in your mind, if it's in my library, how do we do it? If it's in my institution, how can we run this? How do we make this happen? Then these are the processes that, are like connected wheels that need to be integrated as you draw up your disaster management plan. There must be prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery. It's not just prevention, or you don't wait till something to happen before you now, hey, you do this, you do that, No. Study your environment, again, based on your risk as assessment, Is your library in an area prone to flood? Are there clogged up drains around there? Don't you think it would be better as a risk reduction thing and prevention to maybe advocate or write and say, please, unclog this drainage system, unclog it, because if for any reason there's a heavy rain, because the drainages are blocked, please, the water will get into the library. That is prevention right from the onset. Then preparedness. When you get this plan, or as you're drawing on this plan, also include that staff need to be trained on procedures, including how to trigger the emergency plan, so that, like I said, everybody knows what to do. I had given an example of a flood-prone area. I've seen it in some places because they know that flood can come in. They have sandbags ready. Sandbags will help raise the area so that water won't flood in, or flow in by force. It will help to channel the water away from the path of the library. Do you have those ones ready? These are the things that should be in this part, in this section of the disaster management plan. Then response, you need to outline what are the possible responses that a library can do or can carry out considering the risk assessments carried out. Responses can be moving away things from the door. Responses can be lifting up things up to higher ground, higher levels if there's a flood. Those are responses, but it's something that each library has to determine based on the risk assessment, based on what obtains in that area. Then recovery. Recovery is the process of trying to get everything back to normal, to get library operations back to normal. Again, I want to say what Doreen said today. She said that when libraries learn to save in the cloud, then it will make it easier for them to return back to normal library operations after a disaster, because their resources are not lost, because they still have things to serve people with. During COVID-19, when they were, during the lockdowns of COVID-19, many libraries locked their doors, because nobody or many people didn't envisage that that kind of thing could ever happen, that library staff will not have access to resources. So it was hard for them to provide services online because they couldn't reach their resources. And that is something that should be in a disaster management plan for libraries, irrespective of the type. You don't have a repository. Do you have e-resources that you can store in the cloud? So these are the questions for us here. I hope I'm making sense. I can't hear anybody. I can't see anybody. I just feel as if I'm talking to myself.
Yes, Doc, you are making sense.
All right, thank you. Thank you. That's the thing about this kind of thing. You talk and talk, and you don't know if people are listening. You don't know if people are there or not. Now, this is another discussion questions. How many teams do you think your library or institution will need to be included in the emergency preparedness plan? That's the disaster management plan. How many teams? Will you have teams that will move things? Will you have teams that will ensure that everybody is safe? Will you have teams that will make sure that people do not panic? Because panic is also a great thing when there's an emergency. How would communications be handled in an emergency within and across teams? Will you have a central control base, everybody you report what's happening to this number or type in this so that we can know what is happening? Would you have people that will man that base? These are, when I was trying to do this, I was trying to picture how it can be done, how it can go. And I was like, oh, we are doing this online now. How I wish that maybe at AFLIA conference, or if possible, that's next year, we can have a short time, maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, to see if we can draw up a draft template of how do we do all these things. Because it's like I said, never ever imagine that, oh, it can't happen here. Oh, it's not for me. Oh, it's not my portion. Whose portion is it anyway? So these are any last words, and I said yes. And since we are here now, permit me to go back. Let me see. All right. Permit me to go back to now. Let's go back to our discussions. Let's go back to, what slide is that? Permit me, please, to find the first slide for discussions, so that we can talk about it. All right. This is the first one. So this is now a discussion time. Once you are done with this slide for discussion, we'll move over to other slides for discussions
so let me read
too.
out.
Thank you.
At the next staff meeting, or when you discuss with other library staff, bring up a discussion of what if. What if a fire breaks out in your library? What if a flood happens in the town? What should be the first reaction of the staff? Who will the matter be reported to first? Are there any emergency procedures to be followed? What facilities or materials should be saved first? Who will move what? This will help identify the strengths and weaknesses of your institution for coping with disasters and drawing up an emergency preparedness plan. So the first question is, what if a fire breaks out in your library? And what if a flood happens in the town? So please, you can unmute yourself, and if you have anything to say, or better still, if you cannot unmute, just type and we'll read out.
Yeah, if you
you
have
can
something
raise
to say,
your
you
hand.
can raise your hand, and then
Yes.
we will allow you to speak.
Allow you to speak. Thank you.
It's possible that we've never imagined it, really. Typing. Can we go? Okay. You're in charge.
If you want to raise your hand, you can raise your hand. Yes. If you wish to raise your hand, kindly raise your hand and we'll allow you to talk. Or if you are typing to, fine. But it will be easier for you to raise your hand, and you will just, let me see how many hands are up. Okay, so Lane's hand is up and Teresa Longe's hand is also up. So Lane, I think you are enabled. You can talk now. Hello, Lane.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey, good afternoon. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Lane.
Good afternoon.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the presentation once again. I am in no way trying to answer any of the questions that have been posed, but I just want to appreciate the presentation to say the presentation is really very, very relevant. All the points that have been raised are very critical, and it's an eye-opener for most of us. We've just come out of COVID, showed us that there's a lot that we need to do as libraries. When COVID came out, nobody ever imagined it would come. It was unprecedented. Sorry? Okay, it came at a time when we were not expecting it. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, please. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. I'm saying it came at a time when nobody expected it, and we didn't have any plans at all. Even plans for returning back, we didn't have any plans. But I see that we are now trying to relax a bit, and we are not really trying to prepare for if a fire comes, if a flood comes, like what Dr. Ngem has said. And I want to say, I think you've challenged us enough as AFLIA. The ball is in our court to really now do what is right. We cannot be seen to be dependent on the parent institution, because the way we are affected by this crisis is different. We have very valuable materials that most of it is flammable, like books. They catch fire so fast. So I think we need to have plans in place that are going to get us ready for what happens and really take everybody on board. And what I particularly like is the fact that I don't know whether she's thinking of maybe coming up with a template that will assist us, because most of the time we rely on materials on the internet from abroad or from Europe, where we don't, the situations are different. So I think something that is Africa contextualized would help us a great deal. In a nutshell, I just want to say thank you so much for the presentation. It's really very enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Your recommendation is well taken. That is asking that if we can come out with a template that is African context, that is based on the African context to help the librarians or libraries in Africa. And so we have taken that to put it down and see how best we can do something about it. Teresa, please, you are welcome. You can unmute. Stanley, please kindly unmute Teresa so we can hear from her. Hello, Teresa.
So good afternoon,
All right, Teresa,
everybody.
good afternoon.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for this opportunity, and I want to say thank you to the keynote speaker. This lecture has been expository and timely. Seriously, it just dawned on me that seriously, there's no plan. Most libraries don't have a plan for disaster management and all of that. And it's a thing of concern because all along it was a thing of the other part of the world. But seriously, just like she explained, it has become something every library should pay attention to. But the challenge I want us to see if we can address is the issue of recovering our resources after a disaster. Because I was just discussing with my colleague, Mercy. If, for instance, there's a fire outbreak in a library and everything is burnt, if you want to recover those resources, you can only have access to those that are online, like online books, even if you have a library software. Because eventually what you will have, for instance, like if you're using a library software in your library, what you will have will be a record of the resources you have, but not the resources itself. So it will be a problem, a serious problem to come back to normal after a disaster, whether a fire outbreak or a flood, or maybe the building where the houses in library collapses, or whatever natural, whatever disaster happens
that occurs,
in that period. So I think we should also look at that. And once again, I want to say thank you to the keynote speaker. You've done so much. You opened our eyes to a lot. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much, Teresa. This is it is a challenge for all of us to address. It is an issue we must address, and that is why this webinar is important. The question is, what happens after a disaster? Natural disasters occurs without prior notice. For instance, if it rains today in my area and my whole house gets flooded, what will be my next reaction? And the exact question that follows, what should be the first reaction of the staff, assuming there is? And that is why Dr. Nkem made a statement, and I think it is something we must all look at. Now, there are digitization machines that you can use to digitize the real materials in your libraries. Things that can help you bounce back immediately after a disaster. How are you going about it? I think these are some of the things we should all look at as libraries or as librarians, because it is important. Library collections are so important. There are rare books that are out of print and yet very valuable to our users. How do we keep such books? How do we ensure that these books don't get out of our hands forever and ever? Are you now going to do a recovery plan where all your books are wet, you are now going to dry them? How long will it take? This is a major concern that we must all address. Thank you very much, Teresa. Please, any other hands? If you have any contribution, any question, you want to continue with this, answering these questions, bringing your ideas in, we are recording, and so after we take up the recordings and see how best we can go about? There's a question from Caroline. Dr. Nkem, okay, he said, Dr. Nkem, you have triggered something. My library has only a fire measure with just a smoke detector and fire extinguisher, a good disaster management plan, and continuous training on how to enable the disasters and how to handle the disasters. And yes, how do we recover from the disaster? It is a major question we must all ask ourselves. In your own small way, with your staff, how are you going to recover from disasters? Natural disasters, floods, earthquakes, we all use electricity. Anything can happen. What if it starts and you don't have smoke detectors? How will you identify such things and address it? Even some of the fire extinguishers are out of date. They have expired. How do you use them? Are your staff aware of how to even use this fire extinguishers? Do they know how to operate it? Should there be fire outbreak now? Are you now going to call the fire service personnel to come? For 30 minutes, they are not there and your library collection is burning. How are you going to address this? Should we continue?
Thank you so much.
Should we continue with the other questions?
No, let me answer. Let me answer some of the issues they raised here.
Okay.
Two people have talked about recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Remember our discussion this morning, Doreen, when we talked about it, one of the issues that I raised is that many copyright laws in different African countries do not allow libraries to make extra copies of their resources. Or maybe just one copy or whatever. There's a way it is different in different countries. Our copyright laws do not really encourage that. It's also that's why when you want to photocopy a book, in a library, some countries will tell you not more than 10 pages, not more than 20 pages and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A library got burnt in Nigeria, University of Jos. I think that was 3 or 4 years.
I'm sorry, I think Dr. Nkem is having a challenge with her internet. Africa, we have this unstable power and unstable internet connection. So please give her some few minutes. I'm sure she'll bounce back. And in the meantime, if there is anything you want to say, you want to add, you want to share, kindly let us talk about it, or let's start the discussion on it. She was talking about copyright issues. How do we address this? Copyright laws does not allow librarians to maybe photocopy or digitize full books. So that is a major challenge I was talking to Dr. Nkem about this morning. How do we address this particular problem? It is a problem that can affect our efforts in trying to recover from disasters. Because if I want to cover from disaster, I will need to digitize my whole real collections or procedures that enables me to work freely without any hitch. But then again, there is the copyright law. How do we go about it? This is a major issue for discussion that we need to all address. Whilst Dr. Nkem is trying to connect, I think she's connected. Doc, please unmute yourself so that you can go ahead with the discussion.
Apologies, my internet just decided it's still unstable. It's still unstable, but at least I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please, we can hear you, Doc.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, Doc, we can hear you.
Yes,
Please
so
go ahead.
I was talking about copyright restrictions that do not allow libraries to make extra copies of books. And then there are some that are even against digitization. So what we all have to do in our own areas, find out, are we allowed to make extra copies? Are we allowed to digitize? What does our law say about it? Because why I'm saying this is that many countries, their copyright provisions are old. That was before digitization was a thing, and it has not been upgraded or whatever. So you have to find out about things like this. Then also, in recovery, it can never be a one-man thing again. This is also an area that stakeholders can be engaged. You know, but somewhere down the slides, down, I think it was my last thoughts. You know, stakeholders need to know, your funding authorities need to know that these are the risk assessment that you did, that the library, this or the other thing could happen. And when it happens, see our own plans for it, irrespective of the fact that there's a national, a state, a regional disaster management plan. See what we have in the library already. Because when the people that are funding us, they know that we know about these things and that we are ready, but things happen. When you now say, we need help for this thing has happened, we need help, they will listen to you. Carol had talked about, had said something about fire extinguishers, and Doreen said one clear thing that stuck to my mind now. She said, how are you sure those things are not expired? Can you use them? You know, because when we are sure of these things and we write them down, and our funding authorities know, the people around us know, our stakeholders know, when it is now time for recovery, they can be a part of it. But when they feel that, oh, you allowed this thing to happen, you didn't plan for it, you had no plans for this and that, that one becomes another trouble for the library. So being aware, talking with stakeholders, letting them into your plans, into how you plan to do this, and their own contributions when it happens, and if it happens, that will help you recover. But again, in doing that, please check what are the copyright provisions in your country, in case you want to save in the cloud, in case you want to digitize, in case you want to make extra copies. I hope that is clear. Doreen,
yes,
can I go on? Are you still here?
Yes, please go ahead. Yeah,
all right.
Yes, please go ahead.
All right. I want to, yeah. So now, I asked a question here. Do you know any library that has a disaster management plan? From what we've heard so far, I don't think anybody knows. Or do we, is there any library that you know in Africa, in your own country, in your own region, in your own state, in your own area? Do you know any library that has a disaster management plan? COVID has come and we are adjusting to it somehow. But that may not be the end of pandemics, because climate change also stirs all these things up. Locusts, all of a sudden, it started appearing. I think I heard about it in Kenya, and this year they said it's coming to Nigeria. So any virus can decide to show itself up again. What do we do then? Do we lock our doors again and say, everywhere is locked down? Because what AFLIA is interested in is ensuring that the relevance of libraries is always highlighted. Because if a country like United Kingdom, Britain, can shut down more than 200 libraries, if such a rich country can do that, which country is as rich as that in Africa that they cannot decide to, oh, you're not doing anything, go and sleep, go and rest, Joe? So that is what AFLIA is interested in, to ensure that these libraries, all of us, will continue being relevant. We continue to practice our profession. We continue to be visible. We continue to be seen as people that are really important for the survival, development, transformation of our user communities. So that is why we are doing this. It's not as if we don't, it's not as if we are inviting trouble. No, 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 no. So this is the third discussion plan. This says, think of the materials in your institutions and so on and so on. Can you handle this, please, Doreen?
Yes, please. Okay, so think of the materials in your library or institutions that are worth saving. Can they be moved? Can they be easily replaced? What are the triggers in your library or institution? Weak burglary proof, worn out batteries of smoke detectors, or no one knows what to do first in the case of any emergency as an individual or part of a team. What can be moved? What are the real collections you have in your library? The books that you keep them in under lock and key. The ones in those in only the head of department's office that no one has access to except someone is really in need of it. The books that you only give out, and there must be a library assistant to supervise the person who is using them. How can you replace them? Are you sure those books are not out of print? How do you keep such books? These are some of the things we should think of. How can you keep such books? If they are not replaceable, how can you keep them? That was when I told Dr. Nkem that such books, in my opinion, should be digitized and stored in the cloud. But again, the issue of copyright comes in. You cannot stand on any platform as a librarian and say that I will disregard the copyright rules. So how do we go about this? There is this platform known as the librarything.com. I don't know if I know it's still operating because they still send me emails. They have books there that you can easily, once you register with them and you have same books in your library, you can easily add your own to it. It's like a shelf, sort of a digital shelf or something online. But in our own way, how do we keep such books? How do we save them? Let's start the discussion if you have any idea, because we are all learning. I am learning a lot. So let's start the discussion. If you have anything to say, how do you think we can save these books, real books? The smoke detectors, are they up to date? How is your burglar proof like? Your library environment, how are they like? Where you keep your real collections, how is the ambience in that room? There are some books that should not be all. There are some documents. We all know that when you expose books to the sunlight for so long, they begin to fade. So how do you save such books? Let's share ideas. And I'm ready, I'm listening, because I want to know more about what to do. You know, in ICT, I have a little bit of ICT background, not too much, just something small up to HND level. And over there, when you are talking about disaster management, some of the things they will tell you is that every server must have a mirror site, which means that all your servers must be replicated and kept outside of your premises, a place far away from your current server. And then you should not just have one duplicate. You should have like 2 or 3, some in the clouds, some in the remote areas, some in other places that you know that the moment a disaster occurs at your main site, you can easily fall on and begin to operate normally without any problem. What can libraries do? So there's a tip here that Dr. Kem has just shared. What will be the role of library assistants on duty or clerks should there be an emergency or a disaster? These are all pointers to your disaster recovery plan. Do they know that there are protocols to follow in an emergency? Have you educated your staff on your disaster recovery plan? Like Dr. Nkem said, a disaster recovery plan cannot be done by one person. It is a teamwork. And so after you come out with your plan, your staff should be educated about it. They must all have copies of your plan so that if should there be anything, they will be able to immediately take action and step in. Let me look out for the tip. Okay. The third one is, what about the security men? Do they know how to handle the fire extinguishers? In fact, in an organization, all the security men, the receptionists, and all those people should be given some sort of training. And the training should cut across from your disaster planning. Even security men should be taught how to turn off your air conditions, how to turn off those who leave their computers on and go. They should be able to know that, with the exception of you giving them your passwords, they should be able to know certain things. Security men are also very important. They are part of the vital group in an organization. Are there phone numbers to call if an emergency happens in the library or in your institution? Who should they call first? The head of department, the head of security, the head of the disaster management group? Are those numbers available to everyone? There should be some emergency contact numbers available for all staff to be able to reach such a person. And such people should be people who are ready and willing to always take their calls. We all know that in organizations, there are some people who will not take their calls after 8 p.m. or even when they close. So if you put such a person's number there, are you sure of the person picking his call when it's 6 p.m. and the person is in the house? Do this level of staff need permission from higher officers before they swing into action? If a disaster occurs right now and you call, let's say, the head of security, that the person needs the permission from your director to call or to use fire extinguishers, or to call fire service personnel, or to call whoever, must there be permission before the person can move into action? Some of these people should be given certain levels of authorities to operate. Hello, Dr. Kem. Can you move on, please?
Yes, I have. I've put on another one. This is the last one.
Okay.
How many teams do you think your library or institution will need to be included in the disaster plan? What will be their roles, and how will communications be handled in an emergency within and across teams? From what the responses so far, I think that these questions are kind of input advanced because those plans do not exist already. It's when they exist that we can now ask these questions. But the questions serve as pathways that will show us what we need to put, what we need to ensure that they are a part of the plan. So that is actually why they are here.
I even think, Doc, this one is also important. How many teams? Because before you start your disaster plan, the teams must be in place, and they must know why they are part of this group and why they are important. And so they should be part of the plan, and they should understand the plan. They should know what to do at what time and where to move in at what time.
Yes.
So yes, they are
because
all,
there could be a medical team within there, like I said, a team that will help with panic attacks, because some people can have panic attacks, people that will help to move things, then people that also ensure that users in the library live quietly, or put in one place that is safe, all these are ideas that we could look at. So these are my final words.
Doc, before you finish, like you said, I know in every library, or before we build even a library, there should be many exit points. Exit points, emergency exits, emergency assembly points, and all those things. Even if there are no, I'm sure there are emergency exits everywhere, but then do you have emergency assembly points? Some of these things, we should take all these things into consideration. And then when we are planning for our disaster plan, we find a way to incorporate them. Identify a place that is open, that people can easily use as exits, use for the exits, and then find that place, maybe label that place as your emergency meeting places or emergency meeting points. I think that is all I can add. Please continue, please.
Thank you very much. So, like here, if you look, I say that advantages exist if such plans are made with knowledge and approval of your funding authorities. Tell them that this is what you have seen so far, that you want to do this, or you have started doing this, so that you won't be man or woman alone. Then you find out, are there existing ones already in your library, in your area? And even if there are, it's important to have an internal plan at your own disaster management plan, because what you have in your library, in your museums, in your institutions, in your archives, they are different from what is in the other offices within the institution or in other government offices. Government offices, if a chair burns down, they can buy another chair or table safe, But again, there too, they have files and so on. But the one of libraries, they are like irreplaceable. So that is why it's necessary to have an internal one. Then, like we said before, we are saying it again, it's important to ensure that everybody is aware of the plan. It's not something just for the, like we say in Nigeria, or at the top, or something that should just be in one file, nobody knows about it. Ensure that people, everybody that works in your office knows about it. Even if officially, maybe whoever that is in charge forgets, you can now decide to now send maybe a text to anyone. Remember this, or remember this, that climate change is bringing consequences. Let's just be aware of this, so that everybody will be aware. Then as much as possible, advocate for drills. What happens when this happens? Let there be rehearsals. I've seen it, and sometimes it's like a joke, but that is what will help to drive down the information, that will help to drive down that this is what I'm supposed to do as an individual. This is what I'm supposed to do as a team. So these are like, how do I say it? Low-lying fruits as we talk about these plans. Lynn had asked for AFLIA to do a template that other libraries will use, that libraries in Africa will use. That's a good idea, But for me, what I want is AFLIA cannot do it alone. There's no way that AFLIA can do it alone, because what is obtainable in library A is not the same in library B. So, there must be representatives from different types, and while it can be started online, that kind of thing should really be done physically, so that people can hear what is that you mean there. This line that you wrote, what does it mean? How do we do this or that? Before we can now have a template that we can say, oh, public libraries can use this, academic libraries can use this, and so on and so forth. So we will get to that, but we need to work as one, together as one.
Dr. Nkem, thank you so much. Are we done, or have we cut you off? Okay.
Yes, we are done, because I'm looking at the time. Oh, I'm looking at the time. I wish we had more time. But you remember that we'll send this presentation to people that were present yesterday and today, and they'll also get their certificates. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc, for this educative and insightful presentation. We are glad we've learned a lot. Thank you all for your time, for your contributions, for your support and everything. We are always ready for you, and I know you will always be ready for us. Without wasting much of your time, thank you so much. And we would like to end our meeting here. If there is any concern, anything you want us to know, you can write to afliacom@aflia.net, and we will all get it and then take it up. Once again, thank you for coming. Enjoy the rest of your week and the rest of your day. Have a blessed day. Bye.